You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Moser. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, the 10th of February. Police have put out an alert for 3 Asian men who attacked a 21-year-old and 16-year-old in Rochdale. The Lithuanian Rapist has been able to come back to Britain due to poor checks on EU criminal backgrounds. A black ice warning to all motorists is being given on TV and radio. Euronews with Nick Griffin. More than 10,000 Syrian troops are gathering together on the outskirts of the city of Homs. Supplies to US troops in Afghanistan are being brought in by air owing to the Pakistani blockade. Report from the Liverpool protests on Monday. UK News. Police have put out an alert for 3 Asian men who attacked a 21-year-old white man and his 16-year-old friend who is also white. The 21-year-old man was bottled and punched and kicked whilst on the floor, while his 16-year-old friend was punched in the face. The incident happened near Rochdale retail park. The incident was unprovoked. This is the second reported attack on white men after the almost fatal attack on young Ben Stringer Prince, who was beaten by a gang of 8 Asians and left for dead. The attack in Rochdale on these young men has been reported as a hate crime. A Lithuanian rapist has been able to come back into Britain due to the poor checks on EU criminal backgrounds. The rapist, named as Jusas Kankuskas, was able to get into Britain even though he had raped a woman in Lithuania. Suffolk police have only taken the action of placing him on the useless sex offenders register for the rest of his life. By this action the police know that he could offend again, but what can a piece of paper do to stop him raping a British woman? A dangerous loophole was exploited by the 43-year-old rapist that stopped the German and British authorities from being able to declare his convictions. In 2010, another Lithuanian rapist was allowed into Britain through this loophole, and after being in Britain for 3 months he violently raped a 40-year-old woman. This rapist was named as Viktor Achulik. Russian interpreters have been used in both cases at the expense of taxpayers in Britain. A black ice warning to all motorists is being given on TV and radio. Motorists are warned to check temperature gauges in their vehicles and only make journeys if necessary in some of the hard-hit areas this weekend. The Marxist Press Association has reported a ridiculous comment made by a former education minister who has said that the tightening of the control of immigration has caused Britain to miss out on Indian students. One BNP spokesperson has commented that British universities should be putting British students first, just like the Indian and Chinese universities put their students first before foreign ones. This is the Euronews with Nick Griffin. Nick Griffin tells us that he wrote this latest report from the belly of the beast when in fact on his way home from Brussels on Thursday and looking forward to a busy British National Party Saturday out with activists in South Wales. The key nationalist news as I write this, says Nick, is the arrest in Blackpool of Robert Downes over an alleged assault on one of the men who was unsuccessfully tried for the brutal murder of his sister Charlene. Obviously I'm not in a position to know whether it was Robert Downes who clashed with Raveshi, since even the police admit that his takeaway has been the focal point for continued problems with the grooming of young girls for sexual favours in exchange for kebabs, drink and drugs. It's likely that there are a number of dads and older brothers in Blackpool with an understandable reason for losing their temper at seeing the notoriously arrogant Raveshi swaggering down their street. But whoever it was, bloody good luck to them. While such problems should ideally be dealt with by the police and courts, when the legal system lets a community down as badly as it has in the instance centred on Funny Boy's Mr Beans or whatever it's called this week, then decent individuals are, as a result, left feeling that they have no choice but to take the law into their own hands. With Robert now due to appear in Blackpool Magistrates' Court on the 21st of February, the authorities will be well advised to understand the anger that is building up as a result of their long-running failure to treat racially and religiously aggravated hate crimes against the English working class and to set about defusing the time bomb starting with a nominal sanction which merely symbolises recognition of the fact that such actions, while legitimate in terms of natural justice, are against the law of the land. A tough penalty, on the other hand, would merely further confirm in the minds of the huge and growing number of young Brits who now get their opinion-forming information from social networking sites rather than from the lie-filled control media, that the entire legal and political system is so biased against the white working class that nothing short of a revolution can put an end to the injustice and the corruption. Already well noted is the fact that, while the police seem incapable of rapid and effective action when cowardly gangs of Muslim thugs murder a Gavin Hopley, kick a Dan Stringer to within an inch of his life, or beat 2 more innocent lads in Rochdale, they pull out all the stops the moment a creature like Raveshi alleges that he has had a one-on-one confrontation in which he came off second best, or when some woman at the end of her tether tells it like it is on a train. The police and courts need to dump all the PC hoop jumping and bring back robust, fair and colour-blind policing. If they don't, they'll deserve the brunt of the blame when the whole country goes up in flames. Last August, when all over London the young men of different communities came out, on behalf of their own communities, to face down the overwhelmingly black rioters from whom the police had repeatedly been ordered by their superiors to run away. There will not be another warning of what's to come like that, so the powers that be need to take heed and sort their act out. Mr. Griffin then changes the subject and the mood. As my Twitter followers will already know, he writes, I went yesterday evening to a meeting within the Parliament of its anti-racism and diversity group, which was holding a seminar about the findings of a very extensive survey of online support for populist nationalist parties, including our own, carried out by Demos and George Soros Open Society Foundation. With memories of attending anti-racism events at a less than welcome gatecrasher while at university many moons ago, I was slightly apprehensive as to what kind of response I'd get for playing Daniel in the den of rather many leftist lions. But of course, it being Brussels, I should have known that everyone would be polite and oily, and after the initial shock simply delighted to see me because it's so good to hear all sides in these debates. Glancing up from looking at a waste paper bin in case I was physically sick, I did however observe a British green who appeared to be chewing on an unseasonably early wasp. Must be all the global warming. My biblical theme was picked up by Jamie Bartlett, one of the authors of the report and a keynote speaker at the event. He opened his talk by saying that my presence reminded him of an old American joke about a mayor who was drowned in a flood that hit his city. Arriving in heaven, the mayor was asked by St. Peter if he would give a talk on the disaster. Naturally, he agreed. Then, just as he rose to speak, God tapped him on the shoulder and whispered in his ear, "No pressure, old chap, but you do realise that Noah's in the audience." Having read the report several months ago, I was not surprised by what Mr. Bartlett had to say, although the overwhelmingly leftist audience clearly were. The Facebook fans of parties like ours are less likely to be unemployed than the average, more likely to trust people they know, but not the powers that be, than the average, often better educated than the average and motivated by idealistic concerns about identity rather than personal economic resentments. None of that, needless to say, fits the stereotypical prejudices of the intolerant, tolerant ones. One more funny point did arise in what turned out to be a good-natured and constructive discussion. Mr. Bartlett rattled off the names of 11 organisations supported by the 10,000 online followers studied. British National Party, Front National, Jobbik, Vlaams Belang, etc., etc. Except that, as I was rather hoping he would, he forgot one. And the Bloc Identitaire, I reminded him, much to the amusement of all, except the wasp chewer. He knows the research better than I do, he joked. Not quite, but, as I said during the subsequent round table discussion, my colleagues and I in the publicity department have studied his digital populism survey very carefully, and we are finding it very useful. Mr. Soros too, I would guess, will be chewing a wasp. World news. More than 10,000 Syrian troops are gathering together on the outskirts of the city of Homs today. The soldiers are said to be getting ready to do battle with anti-government fighters in the city. Many people have started to flee, but the majority are remaining. It is reported that many civilians may be killed during the clash. NATO has had to transport vital supplies to troops in Afghanistan over Pakistani airspace due to the Pakistani government's blockade to NATO over using its land. The supplies to forces using the roads in Pakistan were blocked to NATO after a US drone plane fired missiles upon Pakistani soldiers near the Afghan border last year. The incident prompted the burning of the US flag in the streets of Pakistan. 5 Tibetans have set themselves on fire in protest over China in the last 7 days. The protests are ongoing over Tibet-China relations. More than 20 Tibetans have set themselves on fire so far. The Chinese security forces have stepped up a gear in the last few days, but the root of the problem does not seem to be being addressed. That is, freedom and democracy for Tibet. This is an extra report on the protests outside the protests in Liverpool last Monday from a British National Party spokesperson. These are some of the reports from the people of Liverpool concerning the laughable protest against our protest and other protesters which occurred last Monday. The anti-protesters were protesting against men and women who wanted justice for British children who had been abused by a particular paedophile Muslim grooming gang. One taxi cab driver from Liverpool expressed his anger that an anti-protest was allowed against family men who wanted justice for the children. "The Unite Against Fascism are a disgrace," one cabbie said. "The whole of Liverpool City has been talking about them." He went on to say, "How can anyone stand there and condone what these children have been through by this paedophile gang?" A local shop worker from Lord Street pointed out that most of the protesters were from the Occupy movement, which was allowed by the Labour Council, led by Joe Anderson, to camp around a war memorial. The occupiers had been given an empty building and had been allowed to stay there. A bus driver in the city route said, "If I wanted to open a business and broke into the same building or squatted there, the Labour councillors would have me out in 5 minutes flat, with their Merseyside police officers only too happy to help." I am adding to these comments as this mainly and indeed wholly type of grooming is operated by Muslim youths and is usually a family affair that is driven by many years and generations of expert groomers well outside the realms and offices of the Muslim community itself. I have been in Liverpool and heard the terrible tales that go back many, many years. During all this, the British National Party have been telling the establishment what has been going on, and we have been ignored. Like all of our warnings, it is usually too late to save thousands of young girls from this sort of abuse, but obviously it has become too endemic now for even the police to ignore. I have heard terrible tales of sheer brutality and ignorance, from stamping on a girlfriend's stomach to get rid of an unwanted baby, to threatening relations of the girlfriend involved if they interfere. Sons, brothers, uncles, fathers and even grandfathers of mainly Muslims work this way and have done in countries they want to and have occupied for generations. They have merely moved their interests to the UK as they have taken over towns here. The anti-white UAF type protesters whine that, and I quote, "It is not just the Asians or Muslims who do it." Well, in this they are to some extent right. No, it is not just Muslims who do it, but it is just Muslims who do it in this particular fashion, oiling their way around underage girls, passing them on when they are ripe to an older relative, and then on to more relatives and friends to make money out of. The Eastern Europeans and Chinese bring their own women into this country to work as prostitutes, under the guise of nannies and restaurant workers. Many Muslim Eastern Europeans take girls from other countries and farm them out, but very few of these disgusting individuals actually pretend on a one-to-one basis to actually have any affection for the girl involved. Muslims never approach Muslim girls. It is always Christian, Hindu, West Indian, African or Sikh girls, and always outside their faith. The government has effectively tied the hands of the police, the legal system and the great British public with the human rights law, which, as we all know, denies human rights to the people it should have given them to. But when people are allowed to protest against protesting against such a filthy, degenerate business, then something is truly stinking in the place of Denmark, as good old Will Shakespeare said. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart, and I wish you all, from Radio Britain and myself, a very happy and safe weekend.